In this example video, we're going to look at both review exercises 11.2 and review exercise 11.9. Both are dealing with a different depreciation method that you might be unfamiliar with called the sum of the year's digits. So they tell us in review exercise 11.2 that we purchase an asset at the beginning of year one for $375,000. The estimated residual value is $15,000, and they estimate that the asset has a useful service life of 15 years. So they want us to calculate the depreciation expense using the sum of the year's digits method for both years 1 and 2. So for both year 1 and 2, the first thing that we need to do is calculate a depreciation base under the sum of the year digit. That does not change over its life. And that depreciation base is the initial cost, in this case $375,000, minus that residual value of $15,000. That's what we call the depreciable cost. So no matter what, we are going to have the exact same depreciation base for the entire 5 years of the asset's useful life. We then have to multiply it by a fraction. So the numerator of your fraction is going to be how many years are remaining for that asset's useful life at the start of that year. And the denominator is going to be exactly what this method is called, the sum of the year's digits. So you can either do 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5, or very simply, if you do 5, because that's its useful life, times 5 plus 1, and divide the whole thing in half, that will get you your denominator. So for us, that's going to be 15. So our fraction, 5 more years of that asset's useful life over that 15-year value. So for our depreciation, we take our depreciation base times our fraction. We would record $120,000 in depreciation expense for that year one. So our book value at the end of the first year, book value, initial cost of $375,000 minus how much we've accumulated in depreciation expense. So we've only accumulated 1 year's worth. So we would have an ending book value for that year of $255,000. In year 2, we start the year, we have 4 years remaining on that asset's useful life. And again, our fraction denominator stays the same. We take that $360,000 multiplied by our fraction of 4/15. We'd record $96,000 in depreciation expense in year 2. So to get our ending book value, you can either do your initial cost of $375,000 minus the 2 years we've accumulated in accumulated depreciation, or you can take your ending book value from the prior year minus the depreciation expense for the current year, and it will yield you the same answer. So we're going to utilize this same information, and we're going to jump down to review exercise 11.9, because we're going to look at how do we use the sum of the year's digits when we did not buy the asset at the start of the year. So we have partial year depreciation that we have to factor in. So they tell us that assuming the same information as review exercise 11.2, except that they've purchased the asset on September 1st of year 1 instead of January 1st of year 1. So they want us to calculate the depreciation expense for year 1 and year 2, again, using the sum of the year's digits method. So this is when things get a little bit trickier because we're doing it for partial period depreciation. So if we think about our annual depreciation for year 1 under the sum of year digits. So if we were doing this a full year, we would have had $120,000 in depreciation expense, but we haven't owned that asset for the entire year. So that means we had it for all of September, October, November, and December. So we had it for those 4 months. So our computation would be our 4 months over the 12 months times 120,000, which would have been the yearly amount that we had. So that means our annual depreciation for that first year would only be at $40,000. Year 2, we have to look at 2 separate components. We actually have to finish the remaining 8 months of year 1 and then account for 4 months of year 2. So remember, when we're thinking about the fraction that we used up here is how many years we had remaining on that asset's useful life. That 5-year span started in year 1, but it's continuing into year 2. So we have to cover 12 months in total. So we know in year 2, if we had it for that entire year, we'd have $96,000 in depreciation expense. We've had it for an entire 12 months. However, we have to break up those 12 months between the 8 remaining months that we have left from year 1 plus the 4 months that we have from year 2. So 8 months out of 12 times the 120,000 plus 4 months out of 12 times the $96,000 that we have. So that means we'd record $112,000 in depreciation expense in year 2. If we were to do this for year 3, the same process would happen. We'd have to finish the 8 months of that $96,000 and then do 4 months for that third year.